But anyway, so once again, Alex is CEO of the Abbotsford Chamber. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Right. Well, first off, really want to thank you for being here. This is great to have you in the audience, you in the room, Premier. The Fraser Valley continues to grow, and on behalf of the Fraser Valley Business Coalition, we're representing thousands of businesses in the region. And one of the key things that's come up today is the conversation around a desire for some strong leadership to see a strong economic agenda that can support the businesses in this region so that they can grow and expand. And with that, we've got some questions for you, and I promise they won't be too tough, but you can handle it. With that, I want to start off with the conversation about, the state of our provincial economy and the mass exodus that we've seen of workers, skilled labor, specifically young people that have left the province in search of other job opportunities and economic advancement. We've seen that in light of a decline in major projects. We've seen the wrap-up of 3 major projects and an open question about what's next. So with that, what is your broad economic development plan, and will it include spearheading major projects as you go forward?
Yeah, thanks. I can always tell when Ken Peacock has spoken before me.
I think that's the question from those in the room, though.
Absolutely. So important details, and I think, if you live in the Fraser Valley, I'm always surprised to get this question because it is impossible not to see the growth in our communities. The net growth in British Columbia is 10,000 people every 37 days. If we were facing a mass exodus of people from this province, would we have portables at schools despite spending $4.2 billion on new school capital projects? Would we have significant challenges around housing? Where rental vacancy rates are below 1% in many, if not most, communities. Just the opposite. When you're losing a huge number of people, schools become empty, housing vacancy rates go up, housing costs come down. That's not what's happening here. We're seeing a huge historic level of in-migration to British Columbia. We gain people from Ontario, from Quebec, from Manitoba, as well as internationally in British Columbia. We did lose on net people to Alberta. The number 70,000 is cited, but we also picked up 40 to 50,000 people from Alberta. And so we're one of every province, literally every province, had people out-migrate to Alberta. But in terms of what we're seeing in this province, a huge increase in population, huge in migration. There is a group I'm worried about. I am worried about young people graduating school, looking around saying, am I gonna be able to afford a home? Am I gonna be able to build a future here in this province? It's critically important to me that people be able to see that. But it's also critically important that we have a shared understanding of what's actually happening in the province. Our foreign direct investment in British Columbia from 2017 is up 230% from the previous government. Our exports are up 30%. I have a list of 10 major projects worth $1 billion or more. Site C is wrapping up, but Hydro has a $36 billion transmission and infrastructure improvement program underway so that we can benefit from our clean electricity in the province. So that is a net for net. We have 2 major LNG projects, Indigenous run, Cedar and Silisms, in final investment decision and in process right now. Silisms has actually started, so if you're interested in resources, we have 2 closed mines that have reopened, as well as a new mine, Blackwater, that's under construction right now. We have 16 different mines proposed, 19 hydrogen projects, 1 in Gold River called POSCO, 1 in Prince George, Fortescue Metals. We have here in the Fraser Valley, you heard Mayor Ross mention it, Vitalis. It is going to result in billions of dollars in economic impact to dairy producers. I don't know, someone in the room almost certainly knows the quota increase that's associated with this. Roberts Bank 2 expansion of the Port of Vancouver, the Fortis project on the Fraser River that recently got approval from the BC government around fueling cargo. I could go on. The point of this is, even in an era of historic increases in central bank interest rates, BC is posting major project proposals and final investment decisions that other provinces are only seeing when the federal government puts literally tens of billions of dollars on the table for them. The federal government is not putting tens of billions of dollars on the table for us. I know that there's an economic, or there's a democratic reality that causes them to want to put tens of billions of dollars into electric cars in Ontario and Quebec. But for a fraction of that investment in BC, major projects will come across the line, and even in the absence of it, we're seeing major projects approved in this province.
So thank you for that. And I think, so what I'm hearing then is that you have a focus on trying to encourage major projects in this province to support them, to move them along as part of our economic strategy. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. But it's an exclusive view because it's exclusive of the fact that we recognize that the majority of business in this province is small business, which is why we've worked to ensure that we have maintained the third lowest tax rates for small business and cut the employer's health tax, because those restaurants, those small businesses, those small manufacturers and others are just as critically important in British Columbia as those huge mega projects.
And some of you as small business owners are in the room and celebrated the employer health tax changes. We know that there's continued advocacy for a further increased threshold, but appreciate that that's made an impact so far. You know, I want to touch back on something that you mentioned about a little bit of worry about young people leaving the province, our next generation of skilled workers, those that folks in this room are employing. We're here at the University of the Fraser Valley today, a huge economic generator for our region and training our highly skilled workforce. You know, one of the things that we've noticed in the business community is that there is a shortage in student seats. There hasn't been an update to the funding formula for this university in quite some time. I want to know where that is on your radar for investing in skilled training in the workforce of the Fraser Valley.
Thanks. Yeah, the approach to post-secondary has been a very targeted approach. Don Wright did a review of funding levels for post-secondary across the province. That work is still being addressed within the Ministry of Advanced Education. But for our approach to training generally, we've been focused on specific areas where there's very high demand for employees. And that's in both our direct training dollars, expanding seats, certainly for healthcare workers, for tech, engineering, sciences, early childhood educators, agri-tech, other areas where we're seeing significant demand for workers, but it is not an across-the-board expansion of post-secondary in the province. And the second piece is really around the student housing piece, recognizing that we're able to attract more students and at a higher caliber if we're able to offer housing for students. And so many universities that didn't previously have housing or had very limited housing options, were reliant on what was happening in the communities, are able to benefit from that, and UFV is one of those schools for sure.
It's a key issue, right? It's a key issue, and knowing that those student seats are so critical is that key driver for a lot of our businesses to know that they've got the workforce and the students that they need to enter those jobs. Premier Eby, we appreciate the leadership that you did take with the Food Security Task Force, and we know that you've continued to recognize the importance of the subject. You know, your comments about the possibility in the future potential of agri-tech in the region. But as you know, we also need to support processing companies so that they can meet the needs of British Columbians right here in our own province. Ideally, this should happen close to where agricultural production actually occurs. And the shortage and high cost of industrial land is making it challenging for many processors. We know that investment has started to leave the region. And since the completion of the Food Security Task Force report, there's been significant effort spent over several years trying to find a solution. But unfortunately, there's been some resistance from the ALC and the Ministry of Agriculture. Knowing that this isn't entirely your portfolio, and we realize that it's a complex situation, we're curious because solutions have been provided to this industrial land shortage and the need for processing capacity in the region. The urgency is there in terms of the jobs that are happening in the Fraser Valley, and we're curious, will you assist in finding a workable solution and a priority for the province of BC and your staff when it comes to agri-industrial uses?
Yeah, thanks. A really important question. Industrial land shortages have been an issue for a while in the Lower Mainland in particular, but not exclusively. I feel a huge sense of urgency around this, and I'm quite impatient about it, but my colleague Pam Alexis keeps me grounded to make sure that I understand how important it is these changes are in terms of the cost of agricultural land for farmers and the speculation that can follow even just the idea that there might be wholesale changes. So what our focus has been on is agro-industrial zones, where we work with local government to identify specific areas where processing uses at an industrial scale will be permitted. We have a large industrial park near Chilliwack, which is an example of that. And will be the interim piece as we make sure that any changes that we make don't impact that affordability piece for farmers. We do want to continue to have food production on the ALR. We don't want it to be a situation where farmers are priced out. And so it's a very delicate balance. It is, though, I want to say, very clear to me that our food security demands here in British Columbia are very high. Having seen what's happened in California with the drought and the wildfires, even the closing of the border during COVID or the roads being washed out to Alberta, this is an area where we need to make sure that we're able to produce food and process food right here in British Columbia. The ALC, every time I meet with them and every time I bring forward concerns about someone's brought something to me and they say that they're not able to do a particular thing, we've always been able to work it out, but I know that's not a great process. We need to have it so that you're able to have predictability and understand what is and isn't allowed and not depend on a particular decision. And so Pam and her team are working on this and we'll have more to say about it, but we're doing it very carefully.
Predictability, we like that word in this room. With that, we have a couple more moments together. I'd like to ask you, when we talk about, we had a panel on infrastructure and some of the infrastructure challenges that have been relevant across the region. We know Highway 1 has been one of them for quite some time, but also, that conversation around transit. So I'd love to invite you to reflect on whether you have any bold visionary ideas for connecting the Fraser Valley as that economic generator and powerhouse for BC with the rest of the region. What are some big investments that we could think about?
Well, for Fraser Valley, south of the Fraser, the work on transit is considerable. We have Surrey Langley SkyTrain. We have an additional $300 million for BC Transit to expand transit connections into those rapid transit points. And the expansion of Highway 1 will improve transit as well because there'll be bus on shoulder available as well. So transit will be able to move quite quickly in ways that it's not currently able to. For Highway 1, we were set back a little bit by the flood in terms of our timelines, but we've dedicated the resources to make sure that we get that expansion done because it's absolutely critical. One of the frustrations, one of the opportunities that we have here with the business leaders in the room is to support that conversation with the federal government. I hinted at it very delicately on the issue of economic subsidies for major projects. I'll hint at it again in terms of economic support for major infrastructure. So when we're talking about Massey Tunnel, when we're talking about Highway 1, the total absence of federal government contributions weighs heavily on our capital budget for the province. It means that there are fewer dollars that are available for other projects because we are entirely self-funding these necessary national gateway trade corridor projects. And it's not just BCE that feels this way. When all the premiers got together, we prioritized a call to the federal government that we all sit down and talk about how do we support these trade corridors that are so vital for our province and for the national interest. The Port of Vancouver's overall productivity is compromised if those trade corridors are not moving quickly, and they are not moving quickly. And so as a province, we could say, well, we're waiting for the federal government, and no, we're not doing that, we're just doing it. But we do need the feds to step up and pick up some of this bill, just like they do in other provinces, and to recognize the integrated nature of our trade corridors, not just the roads, but also the rail, as we talk with Alberta about hydrogen and ammonia shipments out to Rupert and other key proposals. This is absolutely vital to have the feds there.
I don't think you have to hint at that. Is there perhaps more that you think needs to be done from the federal standpoint with respect to flood mitigation infrastructure for our region?
Yeah, again, this is one of these scenarios where the province is kind of left saying, well, either we don't do the project and we wait for the feds, or we just go ahead. The Abbotsford pump station is a great example. Here's a situation where we might be looking at, again, a bunch of people sandbag. There was a crew of guys that got a pool, like a swimming pool liner, and some sandbags, and stopped that pump station from being overwhelmed with floodwaters. And we would be in the position of having to call up the old gang together to do it again if we waited for the federal government. And so we're funding those fixes for the pump station directly provincially. They made a number of commitments around flood recovery that we have yet to see. This is an area where we are really counting on them to come through. These are massive expenses to ensure that the community is safe. And we have it all, and I heard the discussion about silos. They are frustrating within provincial government. We pulled all the emergency management and prevention into one ministry, the Emergency Management and Climate Resilience Ministry under Bowen Ma. And the key of that is we had dikes and forests, we had water management in forests as well, and then we had local government, the Ministry of Local Government doing a whole array of work as well around emergency response. Having it all in one ministry means we can triage which projects need to be done sooner around urgent emergency response, and really stage out those investments so they're as effective as possible with the resources we have. We can really speed up that work if we see the feds come to the table.
I want to wrap us up shortly here, as we're both standing between the audience and lunch, which is never a good place to be. But with that, I won't do a hockey reference, because anyone that knows me knows that that just wouldn't be appropriate. However, we know that the Fraser Valley really is the future of the region, and in our view, the future economic generator for the province. I'd like to look forward, because we've heard some tough things today. We've heard a tough economic outlook for businesses. We've talked about some of the policy frameworks that are really challenging growth and hurting businesses today. But you're here in the Fraser Valley. What excites you most about this region? Where do you think the most potential lies for the Fraser Valley's economic growth, and how will you support that?
Well, I think you heard a little bit about it from the mayors. One of the great opportunities of the Fraser Valley is that there is room for growth. A lot of the areas we were talking about, Vancouver, the sort of core Vancouver area, it's really hard to see where significant additional numbers of people or businesses are going to be added. But as you get out the valley, you can see the opportunity, and that means that with close cooperation between local government, provincial government, business, and community, we can really ensure remarkable and sustainable growth that's going to power a lot of economic activity. This community is on the forefront of so many core areas that are going to be massive growth areas for our province, including agri-tech, processing, as well as advanced manufacturing. And we can also see activities that typically took place in Vancouver, the immediate environment, like film and television, expanding their production areas further out up the valley. So as we see that growth happen, I see the provincial government's job as making sure that core infrastructure is in place around schools, hospitals, roads, transit, public services, to facilitate what's happening, and housing, to facilitate what's happening and where that demand is naturally going with the business community. So that's what's really exciting about this part of the world in our province. And I think people are ready for it. I think they're prepared for it. You heard the mayors, they're very keen for it. And it's only by working together, but also by recognizing that we cannot rely on our grandparents' infrastructure anymore. We cannot rely on lengthy and bureaucratic processes to build the housing that we need. We need to make sure that we're getting things done out here in a way that is responsible and structured, but also effective to make sure that we take advantage of this moment that we're in.
Thank you very much. This is really a great opportunity for our business community to not only engage with you, hear from you directly, but for you to also hear that message of collaboration amongst businesses across the region, from mayors across the region, that they are committed to driving that economic growth and to continuing to make those investments in the province, but they're also asking for help, right? They're asking for that infrastructure. They're asking for investments in education. They're asking for solutions to crime and housing challenges that are happening in our communities. And so with that, I think that's the great place to leave it, is at the place of collaboration. And with that, we're ready to invite John back onto the stage and transition us into lunch. So thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much.